Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the first Friday of the month, Community Open Mic, sponsored by the Oregon Area Progressives. And thank you to Firefly for hosting it yet again. Our guest, John Nichols, is not quite here yet. We're going to start off with some music from the Union Bell Band and just play a few songs, and then hopefully he'll be here by then, and we'll introduce him and get going with our program. And then we'll do the open mic portion after John's speech and Q&A and all that.
If there's any slips, people want to make announcements.
Oh, yes. So if you have something to say or perform or whatever for the open mic portion, there are slips at the front at the table. Very simple rules. We ask you to keep it to about 3 minutes or less, and to keep it family friendly. There are kids here. We have some other exciting things going on. My son Toby's going to play his violin later, so we've got some different musical acts coming. So I guess enjoy these songs. Rick will do an introduction, let people know what each song is, but we're going to play a little bit for you.
We didn't do a sound check on your ukulele.
I did.
We did? Okay. Well, first of all, we're going to play just a few songs to start with, but we have a surprise guest for our second set, so you'll need to stick around. So, yeah, we're on three. I thought we'd start with something everybody knows, so you can sing along if you want to. It's kind of old home week here. We stayed away from the songs about the virus. We just didn't want everybody leaving in case one of us coughed. So, here we go. So this is a true story. I once got a D in French, and the only reason I didn't flunk was I knew how to meet the French teacher in the morning and carry her books into the classroom. That's true.
So you wrote this song?
Well, She thought my pronunciation was great. It's just that I didn't know what a single word meant. On two. Play the song because my wife makes me do it. This is the first day of my life. Swear I was born right in the doorway. And out in the rain, suddenly everything changed. Spreading blankets on the beach. Yours is the first face that I saw. Blind before I met you. Know where I am, don't know where I've been, but I know where I want to go. So I thought I'd let you know. These things take forever, I especially am slow. It was strange, you said everything changed. You felt as if you just woke up. And you said, this is the first day of my life. Glad I didn't die before I met you. Now I don't care, I could go anywhere with you, and I'd want to be with me. These things there's no telling, we'll just have to wait and see. But I'd rather be working on a paycheck than waiting to win the lottery. Besides, baby, this time it's different. I really think you like. My favorite line is, but I'd rather be working for a paycheck than waiting to win the lottery. All right, here's a song that written by Ben Sollee, and it's very charming song. A little challenging on the words. When we get down here, if anybody thinks they can do better, come on up and we'll start over. Okay? Great. Oh, thank you. That would not sound good.
Do it.
Is John Nichols here? I see my his voice in the background. Make a sound if wouldn't be running if there wasn't so far to go. I wouldn't keep on if there wasn't something worth keeping. I want to believe this mountain can be moved, but this is only a song. You can't change the world. I get a little scared when I'm driving through the ghetto. There's a part of me wants to hide, there's a part of me that wants to move in. 'Cause even though I grew up in the suburbs, I didn't really grow to learn how many others live. But this is only a song. You can't change the world. I'm digging deep in myself. But who needs a shovel? And a little boy like mine. This ain't the world that I want to give him. People racing around in cars in cities you can't even walk across. This is only a song. You can't change the world. I've been thinking about Providence, craving a root beer flow. I didn't make these rules, but it's been time for us to row this boat. And on the horizon, I see windmills sprouting up in rows. There's young folks farming and a few that are gonna vote. But this is only a song. You can't change the world. So why try? Why even sing at all? I picture the Harlem Globetrotters with mosquitoes with a basketball. 'Cause there's beauty and freedom, and folks like me came over on boats, flew on planes, crawled on fences, followers, just to find a place to be free. But this is only a song. You can't change the world. You can sing this. This is only a song. You can't change the world. I bet we try one more time. This is only a song. You can't change the world. I can't wait to hear what John Nichols has to say.
Yeah, question time, yes. That's a good idea. I have some pockets hand sanitizer. Yeah, he's gonna introduce them. Yeah, so can I make a quick announcement? Okay. One quick note before Charlie introduces John Nichols. In light of all the viruses and illnesses and things going around, Nancy's going to come around with the mic, but she'll hang on to it and hold it so you guys can all speak in without having to everybody touch it. She's got some hand sanitizer, and we'll just be on the safe side, all right? Thanks.
Okay?
So, I'm delighted to be able to introduce John Nichols again.
Can
A
everybody
very
hear
good friend.
back there? No.
I'm delighted to be able to introduce John Nichols, good friend, good progressive. And I talked to John because we're about to launch a pretty audacious tour, Building Unity tour of 70 cities over 35 weeks to try to make sure we have a good turnout for elections coming up. The focus is going to be on registering voters, on fair maps, and also listening and talking to people in each of the stops to try to identify the issues and the concerns that they feel aren't being well represented in the legislature right now. I think it's really important with elections coming up for all of us to stand up, to reach out, and to take back our democracy.
Here, here.
This is a map, sort of a representation of some of the stops that we're going to be making all over the state of Wisconsin over the next 35 weeks. We're basically just doing weekends, but our first kickoff is tomorrow. We're going to be going up to Baraboo, to Ho-Chunk Wellness Center, where they have somewhere in here, they're going to be having a women's basketball tournament every year. And we're going up with a number of folks, including Art Chigoni, and we're going to be registering voters and getting people to make a pledge to vote. What's really critical is turnout, turnout, turnout. In the last election, the winner was determined not by the people who voted for Hillary or for Bernie. The elections were determined by the people who didn't vote. And so we really need to make sure we increase the turnout. And John is here to give us a few words of inspiration in terms of the importance of getting involved, staying involved, registering if you're not, making sure everybody you know turns out at the polls in April and November. So without further ado, good friend John Nichols.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Uphoff. Oh my God. I have been a fan of the Uphoff family for as long as I have been alive.
Yes.
And I feel that I would have been a fan before I was alive, if I could have been. The Uphoffs have been such a wonderful part of this part of the county. And they're a reminder of the fact that in this state, we are not from, by and large, cities. It may be that you live in a city now, but by and large, most of us come from a township. And if you ask somebody where they are from, they will tell you, well, I'm from Madison. I say, well, where are you from though? And you'll get, town of Linden or Primrose or, Cross Plains or wherever, because most of us come from small towns. And historically in Wisconsin, our roots, the progressive roots of this state, the radical roots of this state, and it's very important to remember that Robert M. La Follette and the progressives were very radical people. There was nothing moderate about them. They weren't centrists. They were not looking for the moderate lane. They believed in a politics that actually challenged what was going on because they believed that what was going on wasn't right. And La Follette's great line, of course, was half a loaf will dull the appetite for a full meal, right? That if government gives you a little bit of what you need or what you want, you may ask for less, but it doesn't mean that you've been satisfied in what you need. And La Follette took that message out to the rural towns of Wisconsin, to the small towns. He was not elected by the big cities. Robert M. La Follette and the progressives were elected by small towns, townships, small villages across this state. That was the first place that movement grew out of. La Follette himself campaigned in places like Oregon and Mineral Point and up in Sauk County. And here's the interesting thing about it. The interesting thing about it is that when they got power, when the progressives came to power in Wisconsin, they took care of the small towns and the small cities and the farm country. They didn't go into Madison and just become a part of what was going on there. And the fact of the matter is, I know Charlie says people didn't show up. The fact of the matter is the reason Democrats have lost elections in Wisconsin at times in recent years is because they forgot about the fundamental duty of those who get power. And that is to use that power on behalf of the communities and the people that elected them to bring something back home. That's right. And I've been going all over the country. I was in Ohio last week. I've been in other places talking about the need for progressives to be much more connected to rural issues and small town issues. And I always tell, and I was talking to the Ohio Federation of Teachers last week, and they said, well, what's the trick? What's the secret? Is there, should we moderate our stance on guns, right? How do you moderate your stance on guns, right? Look, the fact of the matter is the gun manufacturers are just a crooked lobby. They don't care what you say. You say, oh, well, I would just like to have a little red flag law so that if somebody is really in trouble and they're having like a mental breakdown, you might maybe remove the gun from the household. And of course, what happened with our Republican legislature when that was proposed just last fall, they were like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. And so, you understand, we're at a point where there is no moderate stance, right? You can't be moderate enough. The answer will still be no. And so the trick of it is that to win back rural places, to win back small towns, some of the places Charlie will go to, you can't like say jettison the gun issue. Or you say, well, maybe we'll just jettison our LGBTQ friends and neighbors and people who are gay and lesbian. We won't take care of them because maybe that'll make everything okay. And like it's gonna make anything okay. Like people who are voting for Donald Trump, right, are gonna say, oh, hold it. You're gonna be a little mean to gays and lesbians? Well, then I'll change my stance. No, that's an absurdity. It's a silly, silly, silly position. Or you say, well, I know what we'll do. We'll let women down, right? We will not support the right to choose, or we'll soften our position on that, or we'll soften our position on women's rights. As if women aren't the majority of voters, right? This is the madness of the thing, is this message of, find the center lane, find the way to be moderate, find the way to be soft. Like somehow that's going to make you electable. Well, I have news for you. It pretty much never does. It pretty much always fails. The only thing that happens, right? The only thing that happens is you move the center further and further to the right. And so you end up in a situation where you are debating, and this happened to us. This happened in 2002. George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were going to lead us into a war in Iraq, right? And the debate on TV was, should we invade from the north or from the south? It wasn't like, maybe we should keep our nose out of places like that so we don't end up stuck there for a dozen years, losing the lives of American kids, losing our dollars, losing our respect in the world, and ending up worse off than if we had just stayed out of that mess. Amen. So moving down there into the middle, moving the debate into the most boring possible place, right? It's not going to win you anything. It's going to end you up fighting, and fighting like crazy, fighting as hard as you can for nothing. And so the thing that I've said, that if you want to start to really win back rural America, connect with people in small towns, small cities, here's where I begin. If I was a Democrat running for president, and that will never happen, so you're safe on that one. But if I was, my number one thing I would say is that under this administration, not another farmer who wants to stay on the land will be forced off the land. The government of the United States will make sure that working farmers can keep working, because we've already screwed over farmers for so long, there's no bad farmer on the land anymore. There may have been somebody long ago who wasn't good at it. There's nobody farming that isn't as good at it as they can be. The only reason they're not making it is because Donald Trump and people like him use them as trading tools, as barter when they're in some fight with their Chinese folks who didn't want to build a big enough hotel in Beijing or someplace like that. They don't care about American farmers. They lie to American farmers, and then when they screw them over, when they harm them, then they say, oh, we might lose their votes, so we're going to take a whole bunch of tax money and give it to them, and we'll see if we'll even it out. But you know what? We live in the state of Wisconsin where we are losing farmers every week off the land. People who have century farms, where their family has been there for 100 years, forced off the land, and they are not being forced off the land because they're bad farmers. They're being forced off the land because we have a government in this country that does not care about working farmers and will not keep them working. If I was running for president, I'd say not another farmer goes off the land. If they want to keep working, we'll keep them there. We'll figure out how to have the policies to do it. Second thing I would say is, not another rural school will close. Yes. No rural schools will close in this state. And I cannot believe these people. They're like, our Republican friends, every once in a while, they get, they're like, it's almost election time. They say, well, we're fighting for rural education. Right? They always say that. It is the biggest lie ever told. I mean, and believe me, when I'm talking about people lying in politics, that's a big competition. But I'll tell you, man, anybody who stands around and says, oh, I'm for vouchers, right? I'm for charter schools, and I'm for rural education. You cannot be for both of those. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Because if you put your money into vouchers, if you put your money into these charter schools, if you put your money into supporting private schools in rural areas, what will happen is that families will move out of the public school, its population will go down, and ultimately they will say, as they have said, out, just over the line in Iowa County, all around this area, little small schools, they say, oh, we got to close it down. Got to close that school down because there's not enough students there. Okay. Well, the reason there's not enough students there is because you took the students out of there with the vouchers. And you're wrecking the rural schools. And you know what the bottom line is? That means that your children or your grandchildren are going to be put on buses that will take them 90 minutes to get to school. They'll be getting on a bus at 5:30 in the morning, coming home at 5 in the afternoon, and they'll be doing it not because they have to. They'll be doing it because you got a government that doesn't care about rural areas and will screw them over rather than care about little kids getting home from school in a decent time. And so not another rural school closes. The final thing. This is the final thing. Not another rural post office closes. You never ever close another post office. Because if you've ever lived in a small town in Wisconsin, this is what you know. You take that post office off the main street, what are you going to have left? The truth of the matter is you start to see the degeneration of the whole town if you lose the post office. So a simple model. Not another farmer off the land, not another school closed, and not another post office closed. You make that the issue. You say this is the agenda of one party, we know what the agenda of the other party is. You would be surprised at how many people forget about guns. You'd be surprised at how many people forget about the LGBTQ community as an issue. You'd be surprised at how many people even forget about abortion. They suddenly are like, hold it. We don't necessarily agree with you on everything, but you would actually make sure that our towns survive and thrive? You'd actually make sure that we could stay in these places that we love and care about? Well, I might have to sneak in there and give you a vote. And so the bottom line is that when we talk about politics, what you have to talk about is the practical realities of people's lives and give them the things they need. Now, in the 2020 presidential race, let's bring ourselves out of the macro down to the micro, right? We have a great debate going on right now. I love this presidential race. The only thing I don't like about it at this point is that women are not allowed to participate.
That's right.
That would make it a little better. And the fact of the matter is, I think the Democratic Party screwed this thing up about as badly as you could. Yeah. With all due respect, right? I'm sorry. How do you start the process with the most diverse set of candidates in history, and then when it actually gets interesting, you end up with two men who are 77 and 78 years old? Now, this is not to disregard these two men, right? I understand that. The only thing I can imagine as regards, worse than that, or potentially a little worse, would be like a white guy who's, say, like 72 or 73 or something. 73, I apologize. And so the fact of the matter is, we have almost a certainty now. Can you imagine this? Now, admittedly, you're a very young crowd, so most of you don't understand the concerns about these issues. But you understand, we have the very real prospect that the two candidates for President of the United States this fall, the two major party candidates, will together add up to 150 years old. Wow. It's more than half the history of the country. And I am getting to the age where I have zero problem with old people. That's not a problem at all. I am totally down with older folks, and I actually have no trouble with having a president who is old, as long as it's a democratic socialist. Or I'll even give you, if you want, it's a nice sort of rambling guy who used to be vice president. But I'm not just taking any old guy. And I do think that we should bluntly say up front that this is a problematic process. When you started a process out with a group of remarkable women running for President of the United States, Kirsten Gillibrand, who was an incredible, incredible person, Kamala Harris, who's a remarkable person, Amy Klobuchar, who actually was better at giving a speech than almost all the rest of them. She's actually really very good on her feet. And Elizabeth, well, you even have Tulsi Gabbard. She's still in the race, so don't worry about that. I'm just not sure it's working. It could be a little tough. And then let us not lose sight of the fact that yesterday, Elizabeth Warren, who is absolutely qualified and ready to be President of the United States, and actually did the thing that women do, which is dot the I's, cross the T's, come up with the plans, figure out how to pay for it, actually did it all right, was told, oh, well, there's no space for you in this race. And it's a frustrating thing, and I do blame the Democratic National Committee, I'm sorry. Yeah. Because the fact of the matter is, they set up debates, a year and a half ago, they set up debates, when Barack Obama was still president. The debate schedule for the 2020 campaign started so long ago, I actually was a significantly younger person at that time. And in this whole long process, right, they kept pushing everybody out, and they finally, you don't have enough poll numbers, you don't have enough contributions, you're Cory Booker, you can't be in anymore. I'm sorry, you're Julian Castro, you can't be in anymore. One after another, they're told you can't be in anymore, and what do we end up with, right? The one person they finally bent the rules to let him be in was a billionaire named Mike Bloomberg, right? Who was literally not competent to debate. I think we can well establish. Or a Democrat. And so you end up with this ridiculous situation. I would feel so much better, literally, I would feel so much better if when the Democratic Party debates next, about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I guess, in Phoenix, if they debated, if we had just the whole slate of all those candidates on from the start. Let America, when it's actually seriously thinking about the race, at this point, let them see a real debate now. And the fact of the matter is, people might come out differently on it. That's the truth. People might well look at Cory Booker and say, hey, you know what? He's got a little bit more to offer than I thought. They might look at Elizabeth Warren and say, you know what? On balance, I might prefer her as my candidate. But what you've ended up with is Bernie Sanders, who I have immense regard for, and Joe Biden. And these are both candidates. But at the end of the day, there is a real distinction there. And I'm not gonna tell you who to back. That's something you have to sort out. I'm just hoping that it gets to Wisconsin. I hope we have a primary here. And I know that everybody in power in America is trying to prevent us from having a say in this thing. Because every night, if you turn television on, what are they going to tell you? You know, we've knocked out everybody else. We finally got Elizabeth Warren out of that race, and now we got to get one more out very quickly, and then we'll have a nominee. And they keep wanting to end this race. And I happen to believe that no race for president ever matters until it gets to Wisconsin. And so I want, we'll get here in the summer, and when when the Democratic Party will nominate its nominee in the greatest socialist city in America, Milwaukee. But no, I want the race to come to Wisconsin, and I want Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders to go to town after town after town across this state and to make their case to the people of Wisconsin. And I do respect greatly that each of them has a case. And I'm not going to talk down one or the other, because in this case, I want them to give us their best. And I want Joe Biden to make his case that he is more electable. And I want Bernie Sanders to make his case that he is more electable. I want them to talk about the issues. I want a real race in the state of Wisconsin. And most of all, we got a machine working back there. I want to make sure that they talk about the issues that we were just talking about small towns and farmers and communities that have been left behind. Because if they don't learn to do that in the primary process, they will screw it up in November. And the fact is, Wisconsin's job is to teach candidates how to run right for President of the United States. And if they don't learn it here, they aren't going to do it. And I'll be blunt with you, Hillary Clinton didn't learn it. She did not learn it because she didn't come to campaign in Wisconsin in 2016 after she was nominated. And that was absurd, and that was wrong. And her campaign charged for yard signs. And they did so many things that were out of sync with this state. And so one of the reasons why I want a primary process to come to this state is because I want people to know how to do it. Because I don't like the fact that the state of Wisconsin is held up as one of the 3 states that made Donald Trump president. To me, that is a deeply off-putting reality. Because that's not who we are. And it shouldn't be who we are. And so the most important thing that's going on now, that Charlie will go out and try and do, is get a lot of people registered, get a lot of people engaged, so that we can have an election this fall with a great big Wisconsin level, competing with Minnesota and Maine for the best turnout in the country election. And I want to see a campaign in this state that reaches out to the people of Wisconsin and says, you know, we're actually, the Democratic Party might actually be on your side, might actually be concerned about your place. If that happens, Wisconsin's going to be out of the battleground state list very, very quickly. The truth of the matter is, this is not a state that Democrats should have to compete for at the presidential level. This is not a state where Donald Trump should be competitive. He is competitive here because the Democrats have not done enough. And my confirmation of that came in November of 2018. Because in November of 2018, what did the state of Wisconsin do? Nominated a teacher from Plymouth for governor of the state, right? And there were, I'm certainly not going to talk him down in any way, but it's possible that Tony Evers is not the most exciting person you ever met. Right? I mean, and I'd say that, said it to his face, so I guess it's okay. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have to nominate the most exciting person you ever met. You have to have a set of ideas and values that make sense to people. And the bottom line on why Tony Evers got elected governor of Wisconsin is because he's a decent man. Yeah. He's a decent man. Yeah, he's a good man. And the fact of the matter is, Scott Walker isn't. And it wasn't that the previous people who had run against Walker weren't good people, they were. But the trick of it was that for Tony Evers, his decency was something that came through so strong. And they've treated him horrible as governor. They've been awful to him as governor. They have not worked with him. They have not respected him. They have tried to undermine him at every turn. And you want to know something? He's going to get reelected in 2022 because the people of Wisconsin are going to reward decency over the jerky approach of the Republicans who have elected. That's the bottom line. It's going to, and so our national Democrats ought to recognize that that's a little something you want to put in the mix. It actually airs, and I will say this in Joe Biden's favor.
Say the same thing for Tammy.
Tammy, yeah, I will say the same thing for Tammy in a second. But the thing is, I'll say this in Joe Biden's favor. When he was accepting the endorsements on Monday night from Beto O'Rourke and Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg, he did it with a decency and a humanity and a respect for them. And I frankly think he won a lot of votes just by people looking at that and saying, wow, here's a guy who's getting endorsed by other people. Instead of just talking about himself, he talked about the people that were endorsing him at great length and with a tremendous amount of humanity and decency. And so I'll give him that. I'll give him that. But here's the other thing I want to talk about, just one final element with 2018. Understand that what the Democratic Party did in Wisconsin in 2018 was everything they tell you not to do, right? So they're the leader of their ticket, their gubernatorial candidate is, dare I say, boring. Like just a solid guy who really likes to play a lot of popular card games in Wisconsin. And no, I mean, it's a nice guy, right? And then his running mate, right, is a 32-year-old African-American community organizer, right? Everything our right-wing friends have told us is just awful, right? And he is actually very, very, very progressive, right? That's the guy there. And then for Attorney General, they nominate a 34-year-old former prosecutor, guy who knows his way around, very, very good lawyer who's talking about criminal justice reform and talking about all the things you're not supposed to talk about, and happens to be the son of Peg Lautenschlager, the greatest Attorney General in the history of the state of Wisconsin. And then for state treasurer, they nominate 30-something woman who's never held office before, total newcomer to our politics, right? With a Polish name from up in Eau Claire, Sarah Godlewski, and there you go, right? And who campaigned everywhere she needed to and did it fantastically. And then finally they throw on a guy named LaFollette for Secretary of State. You look at that ticket. That's not a ticket that by and large most of your political consultants would have told you to put together, right? They would have had all sorts of good advice for you and blah, blah, blah. And then the last candidate on the statewide ticket was an out lesbian who votes against wars, right? Okay. And so everything about it was just, this can't possibly happen. And on election night 2018 at about 1 a.m., I was doing Amy Goodman's radio or show and doing it by Skype or something. It's one of these things that I can never make work. And my wife called me from down at the victory party for Tony Evers, and she said, you got to get down here. He's going to win. And I said, no, he's not going to win because I know the state really well. I'm really smart, right? And I looked at the whole map of the state. I know the counties that are out. I know what isn't out. And so he's not going to win. And there's going to be another 4 years where Scott Walker serves as governor of Wisconsin and keeps trying to run for president and doing other crazy things. And he's going to keep treating the people of Milwaukee horribly, and he's going to underfund the schools in Milwaukee, and he's going to play a divisive politics that is particularly harmful to the people on the north side of Milwaukee, and the African American community. He's just going to continue to be this awful, lousy governor. And my wife said, it's interesting you say that, because they just found like 40,000 votes from the north side of Milwaukee. And they did. And the fact of the matter is, the people that Scott Walker treated worst in this state provided the votes that were needed to elect a teacher as our governor, a community organizer as our lieutenant governor, a smart young prosecutor as our attorney general, a remarkable, energetic young woman as our state treasurer, a La Follette as our secretary of state, and Tammy Baldwin, a proud out member of the LGBTQ community who also happens to be the best member of the United States Senate to another term. Democrats won every race from the top of the ballot statewide down to the bottom. Think about that. Think about that. And then do not ever let anybody tell you that this state can't be won by a Democratic presidential nominee who is decent and serious and does it right in 2020. Wisconsin is not going to give Donald Trump another term as president of the United States. And I can't conclude on a better remark than that, except to say that in case you don't believe what I am saying, in case you doubt me, Charlie Uphoff in his camper is going to go out and find those extra votes that are needed to put progressive politics back on the map all over this state. And the truth of the matter is, I think we can all agree, Charlie is a little bit crazy. He is just crazy enough to dot the I and cross the T and make sure that 2020 is the year where Wisconsin is our North Star state that leads this country out of the depths of Donald Trump's presidency and into a bright future of progressive politics that supports economic and social and racial justice, that says we can save our planet, that says we can end the wars. When it's all said and done, when all the fights are won, everyone in this country will turn and say, there's a guy who done it. His name was Charlie Uphoff. Thank you very much.
I gotta tell you, we're not gonna be able to do this alone. So I'm gonna have an ask for you. Got 35 weekends we're gonna be going out on the road to mobilize voters, register voters, make sure we have a turnout. How many people here are willing to give up one weekend? Awesome, awesome. We're got a really ambitious schedule. We're going to be spending a number of weeks in Milwaukee. One of the things that really got this thing started, I put together a spreadsheet with a list of all the voters, registered voters in Wisconsin for every ward in the state from 2016 compared with December 2019. In Milwaukee alone, 43,709 fewer registered voters in December than there were 4 years ago. The good news is that we won the governorship and all the congressional offices, all the statewide offices. The sad news is, except for Milwaukee and Dane County, Tony Evers lost the rest of the state by 250,000 votes.
Well, yeah, but let's be clear that he did win Ashland, Bayfield, and Superior.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have our work cut out for us. The Vote-mobile, not Batmobile, but the Vote-mobile is out and back. If you'd like to take a look, it's a 34-foot motor home. We went up to Big Lake, Minnesota, found a motor home on Craigslist for $10,000. Only 30,000 miles. So I decided to take some money out of my 401k before the market crashed. And we now have a 34-foot motorhome that's going to be a Vote-mobile that's going to be going all over the state of Wisconsin, 70 cities, more than 70 cities, in 35 weeks to turn out the vote. And we'd like to have you come with us. And if you're in a position where you think you can help us out, cover some of the cost for gas. Sad news is it doesn't get great mileage. But this is an exciting opportunity. One of the things that really impressed me, spent some weekends down in Iowa in 2016 knocking on doors for Bernie Sanders. The thing that impressed me the most, he regularly said, it's not about me.
Right.
It's not about me. And this tour isn't about me, it's about us. There isn't an us and a them, there's just us. And we need to turn out the vote in Wisconsin to take back our state, to take back our country, to take back our democracy. So, come on down. We'd love to have you on the tour.
All right. Charlie Uphoff. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hey, you know what? You don't have to worry too much about the microphone. I bet you can just say it and I'll be able to hear you. Let's just take a couple of questions. We won't keep you here too late.
But I think it's on video.
Oh, it's on video, so they gotta give you the mic. Okay, what are you gonna do? You gonna take?
You need,
I'll take-
I'll take this one.
Alrighty. Good. Look at the high tech. This is amazing.
Question.
I gotta go speak. I gotta go speak at
Name
Sunday.
and where you're from and question.
Donna Gursky, and I'm from rural Oregon.
Yay.
I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about, I'm not convinced that we really lost the last election between gerrymandering, Russia, and voter suppression.
Well.
And it's in the news now. I saw it on the news last night that Russia's at it again. They're already interfering. So, and we know Hillary got more votes. And
Yeah.
and look at our seats in the House and the Senate. How there's so many more Democratic votes, but how many seats we get and how many seats the Republicans get.
So you have put a lot on the table, Mike, right? There you go. And all of it seems to when you boil it all down, you know, like if you're trying to get just the sugar out of something, right? You boil away all the sap and everything. You come down to the core thing. It sort of seems like it's rigged against us. Is that about right? Yeah. It seems, and you know, it's interesting
Talking
because
gerrymandering?
yeah, you know. And the interesting thing about that is that you might think it's rigged against Democrats. It's not. It's rigged against a politics that's actually representative of where the people are at. It happens that more people in Wisconsin want to elect a Democrat than a Republican. But the truth of the matter is it's not Democrat or Republican. This is a system that doesn't work for the great mass of people. And you have to ask why they rig it. Why do they have to rig it in so many ways? Why do they have to draw lines in districts that are so ridiculously uncompetitive? Why do they have to take the limits off on campaign finance? Why do they have to corrupt our courts and turn them into partisan institutions that extend from the Wisconsin manufacturers and commerce all the way over to the realtors? And why do they have to do this? The truth of the matter is because the great majority of people are not on the side of economic power concentrated in the hands of a few. And the few that have concentrated their power use it to make sure that their henchmen, their paid servants, the people who do not obey their oaths of office when they swear an oath to the Constitution and to the public good, that those people will be in power, right? This is the bottom line reality. We should never, ever talk about it in any other way. The fact of the matter is, wealth and power has corrupted our politics so that it will continue to serve wealth and power, not the great mass of people. That's the bottom line. And it is why you have to recognize that it does matter to call out plutocrats and autocrats and plutocracy and oligarchy. It matters to say these words that are so frequently pushed aside in our politics because we need to know who we're up against. We actually had, this is the most wonderful thing that I've ever seen in modern politics. We had an actual test of what a billionaire can do, right?
With money.
Mike Bloomberg came in with piles of money, spent it like crazy, bought a beautiful office up by the square in downtown Madison, got the whole paid people, he was paying people unimaginable amounts of money. His TV ads were everywhere. You couldn't open up the computer without seeing it. It was everywhere you could imagine. And then he finally got on the debate stage And Elizabeth Warren, I realize she did say some things, but my view is that if she had simply looked at him, he would have melted. And she didn't even have to say anything. She was just like, seriously? But when she did open her mouth, and she talked about how wealth and power uses its positions to abuse, yes, Charlie, you can hang it up. How wealth and power abuses its positions to abuse women. When he talked about how you refuse to disclose the wrongs that you do. When she put that on that table that night, Michael Bloomberg was destroyed because he was a billionaire and he acted like a billionaire. And the truth of the matter is, Elizabeth Warren was the hero that night, but Bernie Sanders is also a hero when he said, on the question of how would you deal with billionaires, we shouldn't have billionaires. We should not have them. Because the truth of the matter is, if you go over $1 billion, you're going to be using that extra money to screw up our politics, not to make it better. So, in answer to your question, yes, the deck is stacked. It's a mess, and it's true. And we have gerrymandering, we have campaign finance abuses, we have the Electoral College, which literally prevents the winner of the popular vote from becoming president of the United States. We have all of this, and there's only one way out. There is only one way out, and that is to win big. You know, I mean, this is the thing. Anybody who says, I think we can narrowly win an election, runs screaming from the room. Because the truth of the matter is, a narrow victory will not get you the change that you need. And the truth is, as much as I respect Tony Evers, that's the reality of the circumstance we are in. He won narrowly. He is the governor of Wisconsin, but Robin Vos and Scott Fitzgerald have used their illicit power, the power they got through ruining our electoral processes with gerrymandering. They have used that power to disempower our governor and our attorney general. And the only answer to that is to vote in April for a Supreme Court justice that will start to tip that balance back. Every election matters. Every election matters. And then to vote on that same day in April for a nominee for president of the United States. You get to pick who you want, but pick somebody who you think is going to generate a massive turnout that begins to tip the balance back, because small victories are not sufficient. If you want to deal with gerrymandering, if you want to deal with money in politics, if you want to deal with the Electoral College, if you want to deal with the gaming of this system, you got to win big enough to actually make it start to change.
Is there a law when our new maps have to be out?
What's that?
When do our new maps have to be out?
When do our new maps have to be out? Simple, quick answer to that. Don't worry about that. Worry about the census.
I know.
Okay?
Yeah.
The census is what matters. Get the numbers down, and then when that census data comes in, and that comes in later this year, then you have, basically, there is a pressure to do the maps in the aftermath, sometime shortly after. It's not a precise requirement, but you have to do it before the next election cycle, right? And don't let them game it. Get a census that they can't avoid.
All right, we got some more questions. We're going to go 1, 2, 3,
And I think that'll probably get us back to where we need to be.
Michael, and I just wanted to remind people that they need census workers to help take,
Yes.
they're paying like $22 an hour, and they need like 2,800 people to do it here in Dane County. So if you could participate in that, that would help a whole lot.
That is, thank you, sir. And Whitman, where's my daughter? My daughter's back there someplace. Whitman, is it only 22 or how much is it? They're thinking about raising it. My daughter is 16. My daughter is 16 and she desperately wants to be a census worker, but they don't let you do it until you're 18.
All right, next question is here, then we're going here, and then I'm...
Thanks. Okay.
Just about the census again.
Yes.
Another
Love
thing.
it. Why do I love Oregon area progressives? Because they focus in on census questions.
All right, well, I know we probably all thought, okay, how are they gonna rig the census so we don't get representation right? So I guess then we have to have the Democrat in the White House when the final numbers or final part of the census is done. I do not trust this administration to not rig the census.
Well, they already tried. I mean, in fact, your lack of trust is well-founded. Because they did try to game it, right? There were all sorts of efforts to game it in the initial stages.
Again, more.
We won some of those fights.
Right.
And here's the bottom line. We should never trust power. Period. We just shouldn't trust it. We shouldn't trust it when Democrats have it. We shouldn't trust it when Republicans have it. We just shouldn't trust power. We should be skeptical. We should take a lesson from our friend Ronald Reagan, who said trust but verify. And the truth of the matter is, on the census, that's really important. But the most important thing is not to be skeptical right now. Not to be frustrated, not to be discouraged right now, not to think, oh, they may game it or they may try to mess with it. What's important right now is to go out and get everybody counted. And I mean everybody counted. Because the truth is, the more people that are counted, the harder it is to gerrymander. Right. Genuinely, if you pile those numbers up, you begin to make the case for doing it right. And Governor Evers has done a fantastic thing. His proposal for this Citizens Council on redistricting, now it doesn't have power, and the Republicans are not going to back it up or support it. But the fact of the matter is, if the Republicans draw maps that are a mess again, and this thing ends up in court, what that Citizens Commission does, if they do it right, can be submitted as an argument for one set of lines. And so what the governor is doing is essentially creating an argument for the inevitable court battles to come. And especially if the Republicans do something that messes with our civil rights laws and our voting rights laws, and we end up in the federal courts, you could very easily get a judge who would say, hey, what these citizens did looks like a pretty good map. And so bottom line is, get the numbers counted, support what the governor is doing on this citizen commission, and then let's fret about it and worry about it and be skeptical next year. This year, let's make sure we get the best count ever.
Next question here.
Oh,
Hey.
oh, I'm sorry. I wonder.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Oregon, and I wonder if you could, first of all, say how Minnesota is doing in terms of voter registration and voter turnout.
Yeah, a little better.
Yeah, and then compare and contrast Wisconsin with Minnesota, because we're so similar in many, many ways, but we have certainly gone different ways in the last, say, 10 years or so. And comment about that, and are there lessons for us here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, there's a lesson. You know what the lesson is? When you have an election in 2010, elect a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature, that could be very, very helpful. That was the only difference between, by the way, the Republican wave of 2010 occurred in Wisconsin and Minnesota. It's just that in Minnesota, Mark Dayton narrowly won the governorship as a Democrat. He actually had a Republican legislature, but he was able to hold it back and, push back on it. And he vetoed stuff like crazy. And they said, well, you can't veto everything like that. And he said, I think I can. And the fact of the matter is, he held his breath for a couple of years until they actually got a Democratic legislature, and then they took off as a state. Because here's the bottom line. Our president likes to say that populist and progressive and, dare I say, even socialist ideas, these are dangerous ideas that will ruin everything, right? But the truth of the matter is, in Minnesota, when they put populists and progressives and people on the left into positions of power, not only didn't they ruin everything, their economy soared, right? Their schools got better, they ended up with better tax revenues, the whole thing worked better because, as Paul Wellstone said, and Paul Wellstone in Minnesota, pretty smart about this, he said, when we all do better, we all do better. And, it doesn't sound very complicated, but it's true. If you lift everybody up, things really start to get good. And Minnesota has done better than Wisconsin, which bums me out. Because they're not a superior state. They are an inferior state in every way. We have more lakes in Wisconsin. We just don't brag about it. Now, there are so many things about Wisconsin that are better. What I don't even know. They have a football team and some sort of like Nordic football team. We have the Packers. Come on. Everything about Wisconsin is better than Minnesota. Everything about this state except Scott Walker. And so it's not that hard to vary it, right? To do it. And the core thing you were asking about was something you had. What was your some specific difference between
voter registration,
voter registration,
and voter turnout?
Yeah, that's a very simple thing. Minnesota and Wisconsin used to compete with each other for who had the highest turnout, and we usually won because we are better and superior, better citizens. And I think we also take a little cream with our coffee, unlike the Minnesotans who just drink it black, which is disgusting. And there's like so many things about them, and they eat like. I know technically out in Mount Horeb, people do eat some of those things that you bury in the ground, right? But in Minnesota, it's all like this Norwegian food, which is not actually food. And so there's so many reasons why we're superior, and yet, right, we have been struggling with our turnout. And you want to know why that matters? Donald Trump in 2016 made a heavy-duty focus on a couple of states right at the end. In that last weekend, he was working on Wisconsin, but he was also working on Minnesota. He was up in Minnesota on the weekend before the election. And Minnesota is a tightly divided state. Don't think it's some big liberal paradise. It's not. It's a tightly divided state. And the fact of the matter is that Trump made a big play, and he made a play based on picking on Somali refugees and everything like that. He was doing all of his tricks. And when the votes were counted, Trump won Wisconsin by 22,000 votes. He lost Minnesota by 40,000 votes. Both cases, very, very close results. But I would argue that deeper commitment to voter registration, to making it easy to vote, all the things that they do there, probably accounted for that extra, the 60,000 votes that went the right way there, as opposed to went the wrong way here. And so it matters a lot. Elections are decided on the basis of whether you make it easy for people to vote. Minnesota makes it easier for people to vote, and as a result, Donald Trump did not win that state. And so we have to work harder this time. It's one of the reasons we're putting Charlie on the road. You will not see Charlie for months, which is of course a benefit, but you should, if you want to keep Charlie out of town and have him stop calling you and asking you to do things, give him money so he can stay on the road and help him keep him in that camper for the rest of the year. Let's make this our last question.
Next question back here.
Who are your favorite vice presidential candidates?
Well, I'm a Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin. That's not hard, right? No, that isn't hard at all. And you know what? You know what? People are like, oh, I don't know. Why would you pick Tammy Baldwin? Well, I don't know. she's a progressive. Pretty darn good on a whole bunch of issues. B, she's courageous. Votes against every war that comes along. Vote against the Patriot Act as well. We always love Russ Feingold because he voted against the war and voted against the Patriot Act. So did Tammy Baldwin. She was just doing it in the House of Representatives. She's voted against all these bad trade deals. She's, a pretty good player right there. But then here's the interesting thing about it. Tammy Baldwin has never, ever lost an election. Woo! Ever. For anything. She has run for the county board, for the Madison City Council, for the state legislature, for Congress, and for United States Senators. She's been running basically for the better part of 30 years for public office. She has never, ever lost an election. She beat Tommy Thompson. She beat the Republicans for Congress here. She has won and won and won and won. And maybe at some point, somebody is going to figure out that she's good at this. And your vice presidential nominee ought to be somebody who's good at this. Yeah. And she also knows how to really focus on a lot of those core economic and jobs issues. So I really like her. But if I had to pick other people, a simple rule that I have to give you. It's got to be a woman.
Yeah.
Stacey maybe, I don't know. Stacey Abrams is great. She's fine. And but I got to tell you bluntly, it's got to be a woman, and it's got to be a woman who fills in the gaps of the, just as women always do, fills in the gaps of the man who is nominated for president.
Kamala
right?
Harris.
Kamala Harris might well be an attractive contender. The fact of the matter is, Stacey Abrams is an attractive contender. There's quite a few. I mean, we don't have to limit ourselves. But the bottom line is, when you ask me, I would say it has to be a woman, because it's ridiculous. It's absurd that we have it. I mean, we're picking number 46 here, right? Somehow it's time. And it's also the 100th anniversary of women getting the vote, so it'd be a really cool way to honor them. And unless Donald Trump ditches Mike Pence because of his excellent handling of the coronavirus, unless you ditch Mike Pence, the Republican ticket is going to be 2 white guys. I think it would be a really, really, really good idea that the Democratic ticket not be 2 white guys. And so I will go where you go. I do like the idea of a woman, and frankly I like the idea of a person of color. And the truth of the matter is, while I don't agree with her on every issue, I do happen to think that Kamala Harris would be an incredibly strong vice presidential contender. I also think, by the way, that Kirsten Gillibrand would be remarkably good. She is super smart, super strong. So some of these people who ran for president but didn't quite make it are people who ought to get serious consideration.
What about Liz Warren?
You know what? I was just getting there. I was just going to say, and at the end of the day, I hope, they say that Elizabeth Warren might be bargaining on, with these guys for her endorsement. Yeah, well, I hope she doesn't barter it off cheap. Right? If she endorses somebody, I hope it's in return for being the vice presidential nominee. That'd be fine. Because guys have done that for 200 years. And if a woman said, you know what? I will back you, but I don't trust you enough to let you do it on your own, so I will back you if you put me on that ticket. Now, I happen to think she's one of the more ethical people I've ever met. She probably wouldn't do that. But I certainly wouldn't object if she did. Because the truth of the matter is, it wouldn't be so bad to have a vice president of the United States who has a plan to solve all of our problems. Yeah. So, there you go. I've endorsed everyone, but as a Wisconsinite, I'm still always for Tammy. Last question here.
One simple one. Given the fact that campaign finance reform and gerrymandering are 2 of the most important issues, which presidential candidate talks about that?
Campaign finance reform and gerrymandering. I'm going to say it's Bill Weld, the guy who's running against Trump. No. By the way, I love Bill Weld. But, in fact, he has my full endorsement in the Republican primary. Look, there's no question on the structural stuff that Bernie Sanders has talked more about it than Joe Biden has, if that is your question, if that's your core question.
Yes.
It's not that Biden's bad on these things. I think if you ask him about it, he will come to the right stance. But the truth of the matter is that Bernie Sanders has, and again, I really am not here to tell you who to back. I want you to pick who you want, and I understand these dynamics. But I will say this very bluntly. Bernie Sanders has been talking about the rigging of the American political system for 50 years, 60 years, right? And he's been very, very blunt about it. And he's seen the intersections with economics, and he has seen the intersections with race. Remember, this is a guy who got arrested in 1961 fighting for civil rights. And so he has seen the intersections with women. This is a guy who, when he was mayor of Burlington, was doing gender equity when they hadn't even fully defined the term. And so the truth, and he's a guy on LGBTQ rights, when so many members of the Democratic Party, including Bill Clinton, sold out the LGBTQ community on marriage equality back in the mid-1990s, Bernie Sanders didn't do that. So the fact of the matter is, the guy's record is a good record. It simply is. Now, maybe you don't like how he voted on a gun issue along the way. I understand that. I respect that. I think I can find 3 or 4, 5 things that I don't like that Bernie Sanders did. And I fully recognize that. But I will tell you this. With any other politician, I can find 3 or 4 or 5,000 things that they did wrong. And so when you're down to 3 or 4 or 5, that's a pretty good record. And so Sanders is the guy who talks about it. That is the bottom line. But, and I do counsel you, I will give you this counsel. I will give you this counsel. He has to make a dramatically better argument for his electability. If he is going to ask you to nominate him for President of the United States, he cannot simply say, nominate me because I am pure. Because pure has lost plenty of times. He has to say, and that's why I hope it comes to Wisconsin, he has to say, yeah, it happens that I'm pure, but it also happens that I can win. And if he can't convince you of that, then you have a right and a responsibility, and I understand, then you have a right and a responsibility to vote for the person who you think can win. Because the one thing, and I believe Bernie Sanders would say this to you, the one thing that is more important than who the Democratic nominee is in 2020 is who can beat Donald Trump. And I'll close off, let me close off with this final thought. They're going to have a debate in Phoenix. I suspect that debate in Phoenix is going to be the most important debate of the campaign. It's going to happen in 2 weeks. When they debate in Phoenix, I wish they wouldn't do it again the way they've done every one of these other debates. I have hated these debates. I've thought these are horrible debates. The only thing I liked was Elizabeth Warren picking on Bloomberg. And that I would pay to see again. And there have been a couple other highlights, but not many. The fact of the matter is, I would wish that what could be the final debate of the campaign, I would wish it would be a debate only about electability. Let them spend, instead of arguing again about Medicare for All, which they've done 20 times, by the way, Medicare for All is the right idea, it's what we should do. But instead of arguing about it again, let them have a 2-hour debate about electability, and let them each make their case, and then take it from there. That's how I would do it. And the final thing I would hope is that if it all sorts out and stuff like that, that it isn't the real last debate of the campaign. I would hope that the last debate of the 2020 Democratic presidential race would be held in Oregon, Wisconsin, at the Firefly, in front of Oregon area progressives. And I wouldn't mind at all if we had Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders standing up here taking questions from you folks, because I promise you, you would do better than the debate moderators. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for coming out today. That was fantastic. Do we do an elbow bump?
I guess we do, because we're all going to die.
Yeah.
We're all going to be voting by mail, right?
Yeah.
Don't lick the envelope.
Good point. That reminds me, speaking of doing things not in a traditional way by mail and things, the census, I understand this is the first time that you can do it electronically, and it begins March 12th.
Yeah, very soon. Yeah.
March 12th. You can go online to the census website and do it in advance. And the sooner we get our stuff in, the sooner they know who still needs to be counted. So turn them in quickly or do it online or whatever. That helps them. So. Okay, some quick announcements here. One of the things that the Building Unity bus tour is going to be doing is talking about gerrymandering and fair maps, which is an issue near and dear to my heart. I've been doing a lot of work on these things, and that is a gift to us, because that is the perfect way to illustrate how people's legislators are not being responsive to them. This is our connection to rural voters, because their legislators don't listen to them any more than ours listen to us. So we connect on that issue, and the way you fix that is through fair maps. And we need people to start getting legislators on the record where they stand and hold them accountable when you're in the ballot box. So we're going to parlay that into voting for Jill Karofsky on April 7th. Because she has already said that she supports nonpartisan redistricting here, right here. She was here and she mentioned that, and her opponent has already voted for the gerrymandered maps that the Republicans drew the last time. So that is a clear-cut choice in a nonpartisan race on a nonpartisan issue. So we're bringing it on the Unity Tour. So we're going to register voters, and we're going to explain the importance of voting April 7th. So the other thing is, as you all know, we need some help. Knocking doors, making phone calls, explaining these connections to people. So we have a volunteer shift sign up. There are canvases and phone banks, and we'll probably have some postcard stuff too, addressing. We don't have an office yet. We are still working on that. There's a lot of open spaces in Oregon, but for some reason they're either just for sale, they don't want to rent, or they don't want to do a short-term lease. We're having a hard time finding a short-term lease for our purposes. They want us to commit to a year or more, and that's something we can't afford at this time. But unless you're feeling generous, you want to put $5,000 in the bucket, man, we'd have a place tomorrow, but we can't right now, so we're still looking. We're not.
Where will we meet?
For the canvases and phone banks, we're going to be here at the Firefly, either in the back room or we might be at Beth Cox's law office too. She has volunteered that space in a pinch also. Well, we will be letting you know. If you put your name and contact info up here and check off the shifts you'd be available for, they start Saturday, March 21st and go all the way up till Election Day, April 7th. So you got a couple of weeks to look at your calendar and fill it out. But if you want one of these, hold up your hand. Nancy will pass it out to you. Please sign up, very important.
So if they send it back, when should they get it back to us? Or if they get it today, they want to check it
Send an I would send an email to Oregon Area Progressives at gmail.com.
Saturday morning.
Or bring it to our Saturday morning meeting, 10:30 in the back room here.
I've got one.
Are you ready to go? Oh, you want a sheet? I'll get you one. Okay, so I have 5 people for the open mic who have announcements and things. Are you ready to go? Okay, all right, so the first person we're gonna have is Toby Peterson playing the violin. His violin is loud enough, it'll be fine. If you want to announce what's it, use that mic over there. Say the name of the song.
My name is Toby Peterson. I'm in 6th grade, 12 years old. I play the violin, have been for I think coming on 4 years now. I've played here before a lot, but if you haven't, yeah, I guess.
We came back.
Yeah.
We came back.
Thank you. I'm going to be playing a piece called Gavotte from Mignon by A. Thomas. And I hope you like it.
Awesome. That's good, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, full disclosure, that's my son, so I'm a proud mom.
Go, Toby.
All right, it does take some guts to get up here and do that, so that's impressive.
Very impressive, yeah.
All right, next we have Martina Rippin, followed by Ro Parker, Marcel Thoma, and Charles Uphoff.
Good evening. Hi. I'm from Madison, Martina Rippin, and as you can probably tell, I'm with the Gray Panthers. We have reactivated. There is a Facebook page. I hate Facebook. I don't go on it very often myself, but Gray Panthers Madison, and that's the local gathering spot. But there's also a national organization, the National Council of Gray Panthers Networks, so we're part of that too. Some of you remember back in 1970s, Maggie Kuhn decided that she did not want to retire, and she put her zeal and energy to work and started the Gray Panthers, which is kind of like the Black Panthers, but no guns. I was able to congratulate, I gave one of our buttons to Bobby Seale the other night, and I said, thank you for your legacy, because it's that legacy of activism, of caring for one another that we've picked up on. So, Gray Panthers are going to have a couple of things coming up. One is on May 2nd, the day after May Day, May 1st, but on May 2nd, it's a Saturday, at James Reeb Universalist Unitarian Fellowship, there is going to be a, who remembers Utah Phillips? Anybody? Utah Phillips, the golden voice of the great Southwest. One of my cherished treasures is, you pass it around, is Utah and some of his music, because that was what got me interested in the whole civil rights movement, the whole labor movement, everything that I know. Utah was my mentor for about 10 years before his death. Anyhow, so on May 2nd, we're having his son, Brandon, who plays Utah's guitar, sings Utah's music, and is coming with a friend, Charlie Hall. They've made a movie called Tales from the Long Memory. If you recall, Utah, he emphasized the memory and the importance of memory in what we do. So that will be an all-day, early evening thing at the Unitarian thing. And then, so please keep your calendars open for that. You'll be hearing more from it. And also, the Gray Panthers I just placed the order today. We're having buttons made called Fight Truth Decay. and they will be here for you next month at the paltry sum of $1 a piece. We'll try to recoup our cost out of it, but it's a great button, and you'll love it, and I'll have them next month. Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank you. I'll buy one of those. Okay, Ro Parker, and then Marcel and Charlie.
Thank you, Amanda. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ro Parker. I'm with the Anderson Park Friends organizations, and tonight we've heard John Nichols. We've heard about the big issues of our country. We've heard about gerrymandering. We've heard about the candidates. These are really, really the big things. Tonight, I want to talk about the small things. And you know, in life, some of the smallest things can actually be more important than all of these big things that we've talked about tonight. I'm talking about things that are about maybe that big. The things that I'm going to be referring to are insects. We have to pay attention to the insects. We can watch MSNBC, we can watch ABC, they can tell us about their polls. But the thing that they will not talk to you about is insect populations are declining. This lady talked about free speech TV, maybe the only place in the United States you can hear about this. They're declining in Europe, they're declining in South America, Mexico, where we get our food from, Eastern United States, Western United States. They are in decline by the billions. Small little things, but we need to address those. I lead along with Nancy and members Jane and Keith, who are also here tonight, an organization that cares about small things. We care about things like trees, and we care about prairies. The good news is today we had 18 people, this includes Keith, we had 18 peoples in the Arthur Schultz Memorial Woods, restoring that woods. We're getting rid of the bad trees to get the good trees. And you know why we get rid of the bad trees? Because they don't promote insects. The good trees do. The oak trees are the #1 producer, thousands of insects. The other good news that I'd like to offer to you is that on January 10th, we started a prairie here in Oregon, Wisconsin. Many of you know us for our 5-acre prairie at the park. On January 10th and the previous day, we seeded 35 acres of prairie here in Oregon, Wisconsin. Now, many of you are going to come out there with your dogs, and you're going to like the dogs. But you know, one of the other benefits of that 35 acres is that's where the insects live. So I'm wrapping up here tonight saying we can pay attention to the big things. We've got to pay attention to the little things. There are a number of us that are paying attention, and we're taking action here in Oregon, Wisconsin about these little things. And here is the payoff. No insects, no food, no people. Thank you.
Okay, Marcel Thoma.
I'm Marcel, and I just, on Valentine's Day, Jeannie Carpenter and the Firefly donated half of all their revenue to the library building fund. Their staff donated all of their tips for that day.
Wow.
And the Oregon Community Bank matched what they earned. So their total came to somewhere over $9,000. Wow. So I think the library is a huge resource for our community. And I'm urging anyone here to dig deep and donate to the library. Thanks.
Thanks, Marcel. Yeah, that's an important plug for the Firefly. They do a lot of good in this community, and they let us have our open mics here, so I want to thank them. I want to also thank OCA Media for having the camera here. This will show on our cable access television station, and it will also be available for streaming on demand on their YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube and type in OCA Media, all smashed together, and find all our previous open mics since we've started doing this. So the past maybe 4 months worth are on there also. It's a great resource, and we're going to continue to have the camera here every chance we get so that more people will be able to see this. Okay, we're down to the last one here. I know we had talked about playing some songs after, but looking at the time,
I'm not sure.
yeah, I mean, so Charlie's got a poem he's gonna do. I don't know if we should end. Maybe we could do one song. Are you guys good with that? He'll do his poem and we'll end with the song. Okay.
I have a couple actually, but we'll stick with one. This was inspired by a morning in March, a number of years ago. What wondrous jewels my eyes behold beside the road at morning's light, on willow bough and Queen Anne's lace, the frosty crystal mantle lies. The grasses too and thistles wear a crown by nature's hand bestowed. Its dazzling brilliance unsurpassed. Alas, its beauty cannot last. Yet in my mind's eye lingers on the memories of that sparkling dawn in fields of icy diamonds cut by God's own patient hand.
Did you write that?
I did, but let me put in another plug. I was really delighted to see that people are interested in the tour. if you're able to help out, come on the bus or contribute to help pay for the gas. Everything would be really helpful and appreciated. We need everybody, all hands on deck. Thanks.
Thanks. Then we're gonna do a song and we're gonna have our guest performer here. Oh yeah, that would work. You could look on with me. Why don't you just look over my shoulder, but you use the mic. So I have a mic here.
Give us 1 minute. Where'd Barb go? Is Barb Feeney in the house?
Barb Feeney, you're playing.
What do we keep looking at?
We're on 3.
3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Oh, it should be on. Is this on? No.
Sorry about that.
No. Sing a little.
Sing ahead of time.
Put your mic on that. Okay, time for one song. Our special guest this evening is Jane Mahoney. A little round of applause for Jane. Having the courage to get up in front of a crowd.
Are we on 3?
Yeah. Thank you, Jane. Jane Mahoney, folks. Nice job. Thanks for coming out tonight.